Trump didn't just step up his support for Ukraine today. He also took a tougher stance on Russia. Trump both threatened 100% tariffs and suggested his phone calls with Russian President Vladimir Putin were meaningless.
I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden. He didn't fool me.
Ian Bremmer is the president of Eurasia Group and G0 Media, and he joins me now. Ian Bremmer, good to see you again. Thanks for being here, sir.
Hey, good to see you.
So the President Trump said today that trade is great for settling wars. Can the threat of a 100% tariff on Russia really pressure to make a Ukraine deal?
We've had over a dozen increases in sanctions from the United States and the EU, and it's had absolutely no impact on Putin's behavior. We then had Trump come in and express a willingness to do a deal with Russia and take sanctions off. That's had absolutely no impact on Putin's behavior. So other than providing weapons to allow the Ukrainians to hit Russia back, that's the only thing that's had an impact. And it hasn't impacted Putin's behavior, but it has impacted what's happened in the war.
Right. So he also says that the U.S. will send weapons like more Patriot missile defense systems to Ukraine, but Europe is going to foot the bill. He's going to make the European Union pay for it. So how much can this support from Trump change the balance of the war from your perspective?
I think it matters. This is, of all the foreign policy issues in the world that Trump has been dealing with, this is the one that Putin has really changed Trump's mind. The American president's in a very different place today than he was 6 months ago, close to 180 degrees different. He was enormously mistrustful of Zelensky. He wanted to do a deal with Putin over the heads of the Ukrainians, the Europeans, and the Canadians, wanted to get something done. And now he has found that Putin is not to be trusted, has embarrassed him, and he is counting on a stronger NATO, a stronger Europe, a more capable Ukraine, and he wants to be part of that team and part of that solution. I mean, compared to J.D. Vance lecturing the Europeans as America's adversaries back in Munich in February, compared to Zelensky not having the cards at this shambolic Oval Office meeting, we're in a very, very different place right now.
Yeah, there were those two events. There was when the president came to Canada for the G7, lamenting the absence of Vladimir Putin. And now this, much more critical, much harder line of the Russian leader, saying that, to use the president's word, his nice calls, they were followed by, Russian attacks. I mean, was he right to try that approach, do you think, Ian Bremmer, or was he kind of naive in dealing with Putin that way?
I think both. I think both. I think it was appropriate. When President Biden had a stick, he never tried the carrot. He at no point was he saying, I'm prepared to sit down and have a summit meeting with Putin. I think he should have. I think that there should have been a greater recognition that we're going to keep leaning in and providing all these sanctions and all this military hostility, but there is an off-ramp for you, and here's what it looks like. I think there's nothing like presenting that other than the president himself getting on the phone. And I think that Trump gives up nothing of America's position by spending 2 hours on the phone with Putin. I think it's the right thing to do. But Trump was naive in believing that that was all it was going to take to get to a deal. And the fact is that none of his advisors were willing to counsel him any differently, because Trump's not willing to hear anything that isn't aligned with his views. And further, of course, he's never to be blamed for making a mistake. So the fact that it hasn't worked out can't be because Trump's strategy was bad. It has to be because there's something wrong with Putin. But be that as it may, we are now in July, and Ukraine has lost a little more territory. They've also had some spectacular military successes with their intelligence, with their drones against Russia, showing more capacity. And most importantly, NATO is a lot stronger. The Europeans, the Canadians are now spending a lot more on the defense, especially Germany. And Putin's responsible for that, but Trump is responsible for it too. And Putin does read the news. Putin does get briefs. He has to understand he's actually in a worse position today than when Trump was elected. And that's not what Putin expected at all. So maybe Putin is reflecting a little bit. Maybe he has a little more self-awareness than Trump does. I doubt it. But if he does, perhaps that'll change his engagement strategy going forward.
But you know, if he reads the news, he also knows that the president likes to set a deadline, and then as the deadline approaches, he extends the deadline, he moves the deadline, and sort of never follows through on the threat, right? So I wonder if there is a, I don't know, maybe a willingness or an opportunity here for the Russians to call the president's bluff, because we've seen him do this in other areas. And you know, they have launched, Russia, largest aerial and drone attacks this month in a long time. So are conditions really better for peace than they were, say, a year ago?
I don't think conditions are better as far as the Russians go. They're better for the Ukrainians. Keep in mind, Biden was unable and unwilling to get the Ukrainians to accept a ceasefire. They didn't want to have those conversations. They were demanding, no, they have to get back their territory back, no ceasefire. Trump has gotten them to a ceasefire without preconditions. That strengthens Ukraine's alignment with NATO. Trump was able to get an agreement on a critical minerals deal. That strengthens Ukraine's alignment with NATO. There's more skin in the game for the United States and its allies. Those are all positive in eventually getting to peace. Now, you said that Putin can call Trump's bluff. I assume the deadline you're talking about is the 50-day deadline that was just hours ago announced on sanctions. But I want to be clear that it's not the sanctions that really matter here. It's the fact that Trump is authorizing further intelligence being shared by the U.S. to Ukraine. It's that Trump is authorizing 17 more Patriot battery systems from the United States through NATO to Ukraine. And there's no 50-day deadline on that. That's happening right now. So the message to Putin, I think, is very clear.
Right. No, that is a very good point, because even the tariffs that he's threatening, Russia does about $5 billion worth of business with the United States, and they're not sanctioning the energy and the people who do business with the energy. So you're not really hitting them where they hurt on the tariffs. You know, the way you're doing the way the U.S. is doing.
I mean, he is going to get the Lindsey Graham bill in Senate through, and of course that bill does provide a carve out so that Trump can have waivers if he wants to. But Trump wants Lindsey Graham to do this, and that is a 500% tariff on secondary sanctions, right? Which would, suddenly have the Americans going after Chinese banks and the Indians for buying a lot of energy. Now, I don't think Trump's going to implement that, but the fact that Trump wants to send the message that I now have the legal authority to do that, Trump is only heading in one direction right now.
Interesting. So just as a final point, this does feel like an actual material change. I mean, the 17 Patriot systems alone will help Ukraine immeasurably. But in terms of posture from the president, you buy it? This is something that may stick?
I do. I think that Trump has been embarrassed personally by Putin. And I think that was unwise on the Russian dictator's behalf.
Ian Bremmer, we always appreciate the time. Thanks for being here, sir.
Good to see you. Yeah, sure.